I have to keep going for my wife, Sandra, bless her. Keep going for her. She has to have a life. As I say, we are each other. We are one and the same. Whatever romantic terms anybody wants to use, we are one and the same person. And it really hurts me, again, which I think takes over slightly, the thought of dying. It hurts me to see her suffer the way she does. Because if I'm sick, she'll be sick. If I've got a backache, she'll have a backache. If I'm having a problem going to the toilet, I'm sure you'll give it a term or a phrase, Dr. Mitchell. I'm sure you will. If I have a backache or go to want difficulty going to, so does she. See, she carries, at least the way I see it. She will probably tell you differently. She would tell you differently.
Well, it
always seems very strange that if I'm going through a rough time of sickness, that suddenly she goes.
Almost like an empathetic suffering, that you put yourself in the shoes of somebody else, but yet you almost have their symptoms.
That's right.
Which is a curious, very curious phenomenon, really.
Because there is this age gap between my wife, which is also, there is, again for the lads out there, I went out with my wife 3 months after her 18th birthday. I was 32 at the time, and here we still are. So I'm also aware that even if I died, we were always prepared, and this is another thought. We were always ready that I would die a long time before her anyway, if things took their natural course in life, that because there's 13 years, 14 years between us, I would die at a certain age, and she would still have a relative period of life after that, and that still stands.
Well, I'm actually interested in that particularly. I'll tell you why. It's because for many people talking about these issues, the hardest thing is for them to face the idea that they're not going to be around and the other person's still carrying on. They'll miss out on certain things, but then they're not there to support the other person, and vice versa. I don't know any way that's obvious to me to get around that kind of block, but you seem able to at least talk about it or face it.
Yes, I'm open, and we'll talk about anything. I think one of the great things, and I go back to my daughter Sarah, is that there has been no doubt in my family, and certainly with me, that when my time does come, my wife would follow very, very quickly, whether she wanted to, or by her own hand, or whatever. And so one of the reasons we came up to Whitwick is our daughter Sarah already lives here. And the other reason is that Rebecca, our youngest daughter, moved to Swallington, just round the corner, but although she now lives in Ashby. Rebecca has had a young child, Mason, bless him. But Sarah, I believe, not only is she carried on having a child because she lost Sophie and May, I also believe, in my mind, whether it's true or not, I don't know, that she's having another child in order to give my wife in order to give my wife something to live for when the time comes. My Sandra is a typical mother hen. She is a typical mother hen. No one touches her children, even though Sarah is a police officer, highly trained in everything. No one, and whatever the rights and wrongs our children do, no one touches them. That's Sandra. So I believe that whether she thinks it or not,
whether it's conscious or unconscious,
it's my belief that Sarah is also having another child, which is due in November. Because again, I don't know what's going to happen to me tomorrow. It's one of the downsides of not knowing, although we keep going. I do believe that Sarah is having a child in order that Sandra will have something, I don't know which is the real correct way of saying this, but something to do when I'm gone. Let's leave it at that, I think.
Now, you mentioned there that you moved to Whitwick. So you moved from a city metropolitan environment, very busy, chaotic environment in London, to a rural environment, very different. Was that part of your planning?
Yes. When we first planned on moving back in 2006, as I mentioned before, we were moving to Ashford in Kent. We were thinking of doing that's where my son by my first marriage lives. But of course, as you can, a relatively busy area, not
Yeah.
as busy as London, but relatively area. When I found out I had stomach cancer, to put it bluntly, I just wanted to be somewhere to live where I could die quietly. It was as simple as that. And obviously Whitwick we chose because my daughter was here. We knew Whitwick. We'd been backwards and forwards obviously to see my daughter over the years, and Whitwick was a nice little place. You don't have to go far to be in the country, and why those idiots fly around these roads and not enjoy the countryside and what God gave them, I have absolutely no idea. Although again, I can understand it. God gave them some beautiful countryside up here to look at. Well, keep to the speed limit by all means, but have a look at it and enjoy it, because when you're in my position, it may be the last time that I can sit.